Hello and welcome to episode 363 of the Stacey West podcast. I don't have any specific numbers of player appearances for 363, but we'll just pretend I did. What I do have, however, is an incredible co-host, as always. My name is Charlie, and I am going to be kind of leading this as normal. You know, there's always one presenter, but that means there's got to be an absolute Lincoln City expert on with me as well. Which, of course, there is. Mr. Chris Lamming, how are we doing, sir?
Well, who else is coming on?
Nice try. You don't get out of it that easily.
Yeah, no, good, mate. Good, thank you. Looking forward to tonight. We normally have our little bit of a catch-up before a non-football related catch-up for a minute or two before the pod starts. I had an interesting experience today, and I didn't tell you this off air because I just wanted to tell you about it now. I had my ears sucked earlier, professionally.
Yeah, sure. That's
lovely, friendly man looked after me, and I was a very satisfied customer. It was very good. It was something called microsuction. Right. So it was a medical procedure in my ears.
Yeah, that is what they all say. Oh, sorry.
I know. Yeah, but honestly, I don't know if it's fixed the initial problem, but I can hear better. There was a massive clump of earwax that came out of my right one that was like connected to some skin, which hurt when it came out because it'd been there for ages. Honestly, everything felt like, you know, when you put your glasses on, it's like you're watching the world in high definition. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, sure. You're probably not the right person to ask that to, are you? Sorry, mate. But it was like hearing in high definition in a way. As soon as I had it done, it was absolutely incredible. So yeah, I've got my headphones in here. When you first said hello, when we logged in kind of off air, it nearly blew my head off, because it was on full volume like it normally is. So yeah, I've had an interesting that was about 4:00 this afternoon. So that's my fun story of the week. Have you got a fun story of the week? Any Spanish away days recently?
No, I've got one coming up actually on Sunday. I'm going down to Torremolinos. Last time I was there was on a holiday a few years back, and now I'm just popping down there to go watch a football match, which I'm rather looking forward to. Nice. No, to be fair, I've had again led a very boring life. I say that I don't. I go out quite often. I drink quite often. You know, it's like I'm living a university life, but still not. I've not quite broken out of that uni mindset yet, I don't think. But I guess when you're working 9 to 5 for the first time, or 10 to 6 if you like, for the first time, then you do that. But no, I was just mesmerised by your ear. Okay, I don't know what happened there. That has done that like twice now when we've recorded, where it just decides to mute me randomly. I was just mesmerised by your ear sucking stories. Do you know little stuff like that, right? Little like medical procedures that aren't exactly operations or anything like that. Mm-hmm. They all really weird me out. Like I know that I could probably go and have that done, and it would be really helpful or useful or anything like that. But I don't think I'd ever want to do it. I feel like just little stuff like that just always weirds me out. Like there's so much that could go wrong for something so small, but there probably isn't.
Yeah, I have to say, it was doctor's orders. Obviously, it wasn't like a voluntary thing. Like I went because the doctor said it would be a good idea to go and get it done. But I get what you mean. I really do get what you mean because it was weird. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't weird. It really was weird. Yeah. But it was worth it. So there we go. Anyway, shall we stop talking about my ears and start talking about some football?
We shall. You know how you said earlier on that when you put your glasses on, it looks as though, or you see as though you're in high definition. Well, that's exactly what I think every Lincoln City fan wanted to be doing on Tuesday night. And let's be honest, we got that because what a performance that was. It's a little bit ironic, isn't it, by the way? Because the last time I was on here was after a Tuesday night game and we'd smashed Mansfield Town. And I think they're the only two Tuesday night games that we've had since I think Gary made the point on the podcast that we normally struggle on 3 match weeks.
Yeah, true.
Which, again, is quite ironic. But no, we had an incredible performance against Crawley Town on Tuesday night, and that's very much what we'll be dissecting in here, as well as a few questions that we have got from the patrons, and we'll be talking about a couple of patron specials as well a little bit later on, of course. And we will be looking ahead to Birmingham to effectively answer the question, can we beat them? And if so, how? Again, the answer to that one is with a lot of difficulty, probably, but we will always try. So, Chris, let's start off then with Crawley Town on Tuesday. Of course, we'll talk about the actual game itself, but beforehand, what was kind of your feeling going into the game? And were you, I guess, taking it real back for a second, were you a little bit worried going into the game about some of the situations and some of the conversations that might have been had in the fan zone, for example?
Well, yeah, and I think rightly so. And it was that last half an hour against Barnsley made some real mixed feelings for me, because you can't ignore what led up to it, of course. And it's easy to play only 3-0 down, but then, like, we're Lincoln City supporters, they did play well for that last half an hour. If we saw that on Tuesday night, we'd be okay. So that if we hadn't seen that at all, I think I'd have been more concerned. But there's no escaping. There was some real nervous energy around the fan zone and in the stadium prior to kickoff, myself included. This felt like a really important match for many reasons, not just because of the 3 points that was on offer on Tuesday night. It felt a bit bigger than that, didn't it? So, yeah, it felt really important. And we're going to get to the goals, but I haven't actually kind of passionately celebrated a goal like I did those first couple for a long, long time. They just felt like they really meant a lot. And Michael Skubala's fist pumps after the game looked like they really meant a lot to him. Like you could see the emotion kind of coming out of his body, which is kind of really nice to see because it clearly means a lot to him. But yeah, before the game, that's how I felt. I felt nervous. That was my overriding feeling, but hopeful at the same time, because I thought if it did click, we'd be fine and we could, hopefully get a bit of a bounce. But if it didn't, then it would be, serious questions asked because we're in a properly sticky situation. What about you?
It was just a whole lot of just scared. I was just scared because the last thing that I wanted was this to then be another loss. And, let's be honest, the debate that was being had after the game on Saturday with a lot of the support, which again, I understand, I get where it comes from, was about the management, the direction that we're going in and all of this. And I was just scared that, my opinion was always that stick with it, it'll kind of work. And look, we're talking about one win here. We're not saying that everything's just suddenly turned around and we're going to go on a 5-game winning streak or anything like that. But it just kind of eases those conversations a little bit. And that was all I was looking for. I just wanted there just to be a little bit of quiet after what has been a pretty loud storm over the past couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what we managed to do on Tuesday. But when the lineups came out, obviously there was a good few changes, some pretty key ones as well. Obviously, Jovan and Collins came back in, Rico from the start as well. Tom Hamer coming back, which was, again, quite a big one. And George Wickens coming back in goal. Now, I think he's one that we'll touch on a lot more in depth in a little bit because we've got a really good couple of questions from the patrons regarding that. But just quickly, those those changes that were made, especially I think the goalkeeping one's an interesting one. What were kind of your thoughts on them?
I was pleased to see the changes. I expected them as well. Maybe not all of them, but most of them. I got to the game much later than normal. Finished work a little bit later, and I picked my mate Joe up on the way, and so the team was already out by the time we were on the road. And I quite like playing the little game of trying to guess the lineup, and I was quite pleased with myself that I guessed that George Wickens would start, and I was pleased he did. Like I mentioned this before, a few weeks ago when we was asked, when we knew that George was back in the running, back in kind of full training, and he was back available for selection again, should we just bring him straight back in or keep Zach Geacock in? And at the time, I was very much in favour of keeping Zach in. He hadn't really put a foot wrong, and you have to reward good performances. But I think as much as maybe there hasn't been a goal that you could directly blame Zach for in the last 2 or 3, 4 matches. He maybe has lost a little confidence, or maybe looked a little less assured at times. And yeah, I thought it made sense for George to come back in again. Tom Hamer in, of course. I think we probably all expected that, of knowing that of course Lewis Monson couldn't play 2 games in a week. And the rest of the changes kind of I expected, really, because they're the players that finished the game against Barnsley, other than Joe Gardner, who remained on the bench. But my goodness me, did he have an impact when he came on later? So yeah, lineup was interesting, but also I think what was particularly interesting was shape, because it wasn't just changing players, it was changing system. So we played 4-2-3-1, and we played 4-2-3-1 both in and out of possession for the full 90 minutes of the match. So we lined up with George Wickens in goal, Tendai at right back, Sean Rowan as a out and out left back, and then a central defensive pairing of Adam Jackson and Tom Hamer. Now, Tom Hamer, I think, is really well suited as an outside centre half in a 3. So it was interesting to see him there as a kind of an out centre back in a 2. 2 holding midfielders in Bayliss and McGrandles, and then we had the 3 in behind the 1 of Jeffries on the left, Jovan Makama on the right side of midfield, and both of those players I thought were outstanding, by the way. Rico keeping his place in the number 10 role, where he came on Saturday and was really effective, and then James Collins up top as a lone striker. So it was a very different look to Lincoln City. We had a lot more width than we sometimes do in our regular 3-5-2, and yeah, I thought that looked promising. And the first minute was reasonably promising, but then Crawley had quite a lot of possession. We looked quite nervous defensively. We looked just a little, I don't know if it was nervousness, if it was sloppiness, if it was tension. I don't know what it was, but we just looked at 6s and 7s inside our own 18-yard box. Apart from that, we were okay, but inside our own box, we just looked, really quite on edge. And 6 minutes in, we all dreamt of that quick start. We all dreamt of that good performance, positive performance that really just nipped the run that we've been on in the bud. And 6 minutes in, soft goal to concede, 1-0 down, and you fear the worst, don't you?
You do. And I think it kind of hurt that little bit more because of the way that certain games have gone recently. To have conceded that goal in that fashion to, what ended up being a very poor Crawley side, to kind of concede that, you do start to worry, especially when you're bearing in mind the 3-0 loss that we had at their place. Because for the first half in that game, we were all over them. They go 1-0 up, and that was it. We just couldn't do anything then against them. So to kind of have that happen so early on in the home game, it kind of filled all of us with a bit of dread. I was sat here, and honestly, part of my mind was thinking, do you know what? Do I just go to bed? Because I don't even know if I want to watch this. But obviously didn't, stuck with it. But again, like you say, it was very much the manner in which the goal was conceded as well. And I think this is just a good point, a good time to bring in a question here. And this came from the Patreon Discord. And again, I think it really ties into this goal in particular, because it is something that has happened quite regularly. And Chris, I kind of want your opinion on it. With the question was, with so many of our goals recently coming from passive defending or individual errors, how is this corrected in training? Is it about training at full speed and intensity, but then increased risk of injury kind of comes into it? Is it kind of mindset and psychological? Is it tactical setup or anything like that? Like, how is it that those goals that we are conceding a little bit too regularly for our liking can be fixed and can be stopped, and the defensive mindset can be changed?
Oh, how I'm sure Michael Scubola wishes he knew the answer to that question, and me too. And one thing that I think I can answer is the training element, because in training, we absolutely do train at match tempo. That's something that all of the coaching staff are incredibly kind of set upon. Like, training replicates matches in terms of the intensity there. I honestly, and I said this on Saturday for the all 4 of Barnsley's goals, I don't feel that it was tactical. I don't feel that we weren't overloaded. It's not like they were getting lots of 2v1 situations and had more players than in certain parts of the pitch as we did, or manipulated our shape. It was just individual mistakes. I think it's psychology. I really do. I think it's up here. How you fix that, not sure. I wish I knew. I'd get paid a lot more than I do if that was the case. But yeah, I think, and again, I'm hardly an expert, but I feel like it's psychological. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount systemic in terms of a tactical setup, and I really doubt it's a training or a training drill thing in terms of the group training. Is there anything one-to-one that some of the coaches can do? Maybe, I'm sure they'll all identify certain things that each individual can improve upon. But yeah, exactly what the answer is, I'm not sure. Just referencing back to the Crawley game though, because this goal, I think if this goal came in this exact match, but 7, 8, 9 weeks ago, the nervousness wouldn't be there, because we conceded early against Northampton in a similar type match, and we played pretty well up to the goal. Northampton scored. I felt incredibly comfortable when Northampton scored their goal in that match all the way. Was it October, November sort of time? Whenever it was. But I felt so comfortable because I believed in the team. I felt that we had the tools that we needed to beat them. I just felt like, okay, early goal, doesn't matter. Keep doing what we're doing. Don't need to make wholesale changes. Just react to it well and we'll be okay. And we did react to it well, and we ultimately won that match. But because of the run we've been on, because of some of the questions that have been rightly asked and some of the concern that's been creeping in a little bit amongst the fan base, and then you imagine absolutely must be creeping in amongst the players as well, it felt different, even though maybe in terms of the tools that we had at our disposal to beat the team that's in front of us, it felt very similar to the Northampton match, but the whole atmosphere around the goal really didn't feel like that. Massive credit to the 617 squadron and the guys around them, because as soon as Northampton scored their goal, they really sparked into life and backed the lads. At that moment where some fan bases would turn, and we've seen this in so many grounds up and down the country, it was very much the opposite happened. So I just want to credit our fan base, and particularly the guys that the chance started to really back the lads at that point, and credit to the players as well. Because Roger's put a good point in the chat here, saying you can see the senior players encouraging the younger guys at that moment, and yeah, leadership was on show. And Michael mentioned in his post-match press conference how pleased he was with the reaction. Obviously disappointed at the goal again, but you want to focus on the positives when you've had the result we had. And yeah, we did react. We reacted really well. And I think that's different in the regards to, I know we scored quite quickly, but it wasn't even the fact that we scored quickly. It was just that Crawley didn't have another big chance at all for the rest of that half. And we just kind of, from that moment, dominated, stayed calm, got the ball down and played really well. And, Tendai hit the bar with a good attack. And then of course, it was James Collins, wasn't it? I think got our equaliser just 8 minutes, I believe, after Crawley's goal. But you could see that we were kind of going for the jugular as soon as it went 1-0 down. So credit where credit is due, because we've been critical. We've had to be recently, I suppose. And you have to give credit where it's due, because the reaction to going a goal down was absolutely fantastic. It was really mature, I think, is probably the best word to describe it, which is not something that we've been able to maybe attribute to this squad too often this season, but it was a really mature reaction.
No, absolutely. And it was a quick reaction as well, wasn't it? In terms of goals, but in terms of attacks from us as well. Because, let's be honest, we did immediately come out and like you say, huge credit to the mindset of all of the players, and agreed in terms of all of the fans as well. And immediately, well, I say immediately, only a few minutes after they were able to get the goal, we went up the other end. First of all, we had Tendai Darikwa hitting the crossbar, which showed some real intent to try and get back into the game. And then we did go ahead and get the first goal. Obviously, James Collins with the goal. Jeffries, who was just outstanding all night on Tuesday. And, he probably got man of the match. I'm not 100% sure. Actually, I didn't see who got the official man of the match. I feel like nowadays there's like 3 different man of the match awards, so I'm never quite sure, especially when games are on Sky as well. Do they give a separate one? But yeah, he was probably man of the match and very much deserving of it as well. He was outstanding. But again, the first goal, first of all, there was a desire to recycle the ball, which is honestly something that I absolutely love when the players are showing effort when things haven't immediately gone well. Head stays up and they're looking for other options. And then obviously the ball first of all, but then James Collins to be in that position. Like, you can't underestimate a proper number 9 like that, can you? Their ability to, first of all, be in the right position to receive the ball. And quite frankly, Dom Jeffries probably didn't even need to look up. He knew where James Collins would be. And then the ability to put the ball in the back of the net. again, can't be understated. And at 1-1 again, it felt weird. Suddenly, my mind was going the total opposite way. And I was like, okay, we're going to go on and get another here, rather than, okay, this is status quo. Maybe that was just a little bit of naivety and kind of recency bias because we just scored or what, I don't know. But I really thought that then that was going to be kickstarting something else. Obviously it was, but what a great first goal, Chris.
Yeah, it was a good first goal. And I agree with you in terms of the feeling. It just felt like such a relief. The first goal felt, they both, that one and the second one felt really relieved after them. Like I said at the start of the show, just really, it felt so important. Those goals just felt bigger than individual goals, individual moments. It felt like in the kind of wider picture of this season, it felt important. So big release for me personally. It felt like that in the ground as well. And what I love though is that we just kind of kept going. And then only 10 minutes later, Jovan got our second goal. Great ball in. And then a header for Jovan, looking not to go in straight away. Headed the ball across the goalkeeper, as you're taught. Didn't necessarily get the best connection, but certainly got on the end of it. Made a good run outside in, and then reacted quickest to tap it into 2-1. And then I kind of, at that moment in time, again, really celebrated the goal. Really felt like it meant a lot. I just felt, that's better. Yeah, because that first one was like sheer emotional release. Yeah. And the second goal was relief and calm. Like, I can relax now. That's more like it. Everything's okay in the world again now. That's kind of how it felt. And then, of course, 8 minutes later, 3. Another good work, more good work from Jovan Makana for an assist then. So within 8 minutes, a goal and an assist for Jovan Makana, who was a real thorn in Crawley's side, and particularly in that first half. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. I thought both wingers were outstanding. And I think it was telling that in a match where we actually played wingers, not only did the shape look different, but it was kind of justified by those two players. Yeah. Not even arguably, they were the two best players on the pitch for us yesterday. Also, the two best starting players for us yesterday in Makama and Jeffries.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, Makama was outstanding. Was absolutely outstanding on Tuesday, and I'm just really pleased for him. We always say it, don't we? And I think we say it about, realistically, it's any. We're not going to go into debate on one of their own and all of that right now. Again, we had that one the other week, but it is really nice when it is one of the younger lads who has been with us for a few years, who has a game like that. It always just has that kind of extra feel to it. And yeah, I was again really, really pleased for Jovan, kind of being able to really excel in that role and position that he was asked to play in. Really, really outstanding. And yeah, both of the goals, but there's both the second and the third one, were just exceptional pieces of play. Dom Jeffries with that cross for Makama's goal, like, he's not going to get the assist for that, I don't think. And that's awful. That feels really harsh because he should obviously get the assist because it's an incredible ball in. And also with that, I just want to pick up on Sean Rowan, because Sean Rowan doing what he was doing for most of the night as well, making some incredible overlapping or underlapping runs either side of Dom Jeffries, and just pulled defenders away left, right and centre and created this space. And again, huge credit to Jeffries, because instead of just playing kind of that ball into the channel, into the corner area for Sean Rowan to pick up and then see if he can do anything with it, he had the confidence to cut inside and play the ball himself, knowing that may not necessarily be the best option statistically, or he can kind of just pass the blame, if you like, by just playing it to Sean Rowan in the corner. No, he wanted to go out there and create something and have that wow factor, which he very much did. So huge credit to him for that one. And again, putting it straight on Makama's head, and then obviously Makama going back to Jeffries, who very much deserved a goal as well. So I'm very glad that those two were able to link up in that manner both ways. So absolutely agree with you. And then at halftime, Chris, 3-1. Again, I'm with you. The thoughts were very much, and breathe, bit of cool, bit of calm, nice and collected. And there was no real fear in me at that point, even though there was conversations, of course, and you'll always get them of people saying, I'm not quite sure the way things have been going and all of that. But honestly, for me, I felt that could be another kind of 5-6-1 result. obviously it ended up being 4-1, so not quite good enough. I don't think. Should have been 5. But
yeah, a bit different, you know. I was a little bit different.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable, but I didn't feel like the job was done yet. I didn't think we could just go through the motions in the second half and we'd be okay. I felt Crawley would pose a threat, or at least I felt we'd maybe pose a threat to ourselves in our defending if we allowed Crawley a bit of possession in our third. Because one of the reasons, and this is maybe really proves what Michael knows what he was talking about from his interview on Saturday after the Barnsley game. The first half proved that when we are really aggressive, then the opposition can't get near us. You know, they don't have the opportunity to try and play through us because they're busy defending. They're busy trying to have possession really deep. And you know, Michael mentioned that individual mistakes on Saturday were obviously really, really poor, but it came from being passive. You know, if the pressure's on at the front end of the pitch and across the pitch you're locked on, then they don't have the opportunities to make the mistakes, if that makes sense. So I was just hopeful that we were able to keep an element of aggression, keep Crawley kind of at arm's length in the second half. But I didn't feel like it was game over at that point. And in fairness, we really did keep them at arm's length. They didn't really create much in regards to clear-cut chances at all in the second half. It wasn't as an exciting second half as it was the first half, particularly for that first half an hour or so of the second half. But that's exactly what we needed, just a bit of calmness and control. I thought Tom Hamer really grew into the game, by the way. He won't get the headlines from this match because there were some really outstanding attacking performances. But for his first 90 minutes, for a long, long, long time, I thought he was really dominant, really good in the air, really aggressive. And yeah, as the game went on, I just felt more and more and more comfortable. But I think there is one particular player that we would both like to mention here. And it's Joe Gardner, who came on much earlier than he did in his previous 2 Lincoln City appearances. And even before he scored an outstanding goal. Oh, he's exciting, isn't he? He's a really exciting player.
Yes, he is. He is one of those players that you sit there, you watch, and the minute he gets the ball, you just think something could and probably would happen. And you know what? We've criticised our play style at different points of the season, and sometimes I think we have been missing that. Of course, Jack Moylan, when fit, was that. Tom Bayliss can be that, but I think, you know, sometimes his role doesn't always allow him to quite have that same level of that kind of wow factor. Joe Gardner's he's just got all the confidence in the world. For a player who got a red card on his professional debut, you know, he don't care less. He's ready to go. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And do you know what? That is exactly what a lone player should be, by the way. I love having a player like that. Obviously, we'd all want him to be out, this kind of thing, and we all want a player like that to be on the books. But that kind of confidence, and like I say, fearlessness for such a young player in that position, I think it really kind of embodies the sort of magic that you want to be bringing in on loan. So again, outstanding. And obviously the goal just rounded off what was a brilliant 30 minutes worth of football from him.
He was, yeah. He was just so, like I said, fearless is probably a good word to describe him. But you know, he had no issue carrying the ball. He clearly wanted to take a player on at all times. But I loved his tenacity to win it back if he lost it. Like his counter pressing it wasn't like he had to think about, oh, now I need to win it back. It was just almost instinctive. Yeah. So I was realising, I know it's half an hour, but he was really good in his little cameo against Barnsley as well. He's a really exciting player. And, you know, you don't want to put too much pressure on the lad, do you? You know, ultimately, he's only played, about 45 minutes of football for us so far. So you don't want to get too carried away. But I think I've seen enough to think he could be a really good addition to the squad for next season. Just another loan would make sense. You know, as good as he's done here, it's a big old jump up to the top 4 in the Premier League, you know, in terms of quality and standards. So I would be surprised if he was kind of near Nottingham Forest's first team squad next season. It makes perfect sense just to kind of say, you know what, we'll keep him here if you like. He can have another year. And then that's kind of almost one little bit of business done. I'd be more than happy to have him in the squad for next season. And what's great, he's really versatile. Played left wing on Tuesday night, quite comfortable playing 10, could play like the Jack Morgan kind of 8 role as well if you play in midfield 3. I like him a lot, and I was really pleased for him because also it was his first home appearance where he played more than 4 minutes. Of course, he first game, came on, got sent off. Really unlucky to get sent off. It wasn't a particularly nasty challenge. It was an exuberant one, maybe. But I was just so pleased for him. And it also capped off a really good night. I said this to Joe on the way back, in that the first half was really good, but by the time 85 minutes came around, it felt like quite a long time ago. And it was nice. Like the positives in this podcast would be, we played really well for half an hour, saw the game out and managed it till the end. It was professional. But then after that fourth goal, it was the icing on the cake, and it makes us, it makes the 90 minutes feel like a really good performance then, rather than just the first kind of that 30-minute spell in the first half being exciting. Because and Joe individually, as much as the other players played a role, Joe individually had a role to not just the result, not just the 3 points, but the overall feeling around the whole game. It felt, even like that extra one goal coming right towards the end of the game, I think it just improved everyone's mood even more. And it was, just a really nice way to end the game. I think there's a couple of things on this, though, in that saying relief for me was the overriding feeling. But it was nice not just to win, but to win with some really good performances. It was nice to see a tactical change, like, obviously paying off. It isn't like, we made a change and we won, so that means it must be great. Cause doesn't always equal effect, does it? But Jovan Makama and Dom Jeffries, and also then Gardner when he came on the flank as well. Those wide players were incredibly threatening. All three of them were kind of some of the best performers on the pitch, and they're the players in those roles that we wouldn't normally have anyone in those roles in our not regular shape. So I think it was completely justified. So that was all good. All is well now, isn't it? Everything's okay. We can all enjoy the rest of the season. We are properly mid-table, though, by the way. 13 points off the relegation, 13 points off the playoffs. Like, you can't get much more mid-table than that, can you?
No, you can't. But do you know what's weird? Our last 3 wins, 4-1, 3-0, 5-1.
Just what's been in between them.
It's crazy, isn't it? That, we go through kind of this run that looks bad, and of course it does. We've had some poor games in there. We've had some poor losses. We've had some, quite frankly, silly losses where we've just been bested, and maybe we've lost a scrappy game here or there and things like that. And then we're to win in such kind of that. But go on, Chris. You said you wanted to say something there. Did I just cut out that?
Yeah, you did a bit. So I don't know how much everyone else heard. I didn't hear a word you said for the last 20 seconds or so. Yeah, all I was going to say is there is a consistency with all three of those big wins that we've had recently, and that is stylistically the type of football that the opposition play. All three of those teams will play out almost always. All three of those teams wish to dominate the ball. It just suits us down to the ground to play teams like that. We mentioned that we don't play as many teams like that as maybe we would have done last season, but we are primed to beat those teams that play in that style. And so it was on Saturday, and that kind of draws a line under Crawley. I think it's helpful when we play against that style of team. We need to find different ways of breaking down different types of teams, but let's just enjoy that for a second. Of course, on the surface, you think it's a very different proposition on Saturday, playing away at Birmingham City, league leaders, runaway league leaders as well. But also, what I will say is, I'm not going to pretend for a second it's not going to be a difficult game. Of course it is. But it is, albeit they're very good at it, it is a team that stylistically does suit us. It's another team that really wishes to play, really wishes to dominate the ball. It does suit us there, so I think we can give it a good go. We've got a bit of confidence now, and let's get real. I think all of us would be satisfied with a narrow loss off the back of a good performance. I think most of us would probably take that now and see the positives, particularly off the back of the night against Crawley. But Birmingham have got a bloody nose after losing against Bolton on Tuesday, which we'll touch on in a moment. And stylistically, they're another team that wants to dominate the ball. So maybe, just maybe, this is a game that suits us. But I imagine what we're going to do first, though, is have a little break for adverts, and then we'll come back and talk about Birmingham.
There you go. You heard him. We'll be back in a moment. There we go. Hello, YouTube.
Hi, YouTube.
We've got plenty of people in. Should we say a quick hello?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's StreamYard. We don't need to. You just throw stuff around your room.
Yeah, that Crawley note's done. Yeah. So,
is that what it is?
Yeah.
Evening all, how are we all doing?
Now I know it's on the floor though, so I've got to pick it up.
For God's sake, you threw it on the floor.
I know for effect, and then it's come back to bite me, hasn't it?
God's sake. Interesting one there. I thought initially that McCarthy deserved man of the match. Looking at the extended highlights, Jeffries probably deserved it, but Joven was a close second. Absolutely. I just want to shout out, and I didn't do it in the first half of the proper pod, but I thought that Rico played a really good game, especially in the first half. I thought he was both able to create things himself, but also some of his runs that you'll never really get the stats for.
Yeah, true.
He was just dragging players left, right, and centre again, and I thought he was outstanding in that position.
I think that's what you get when you play someone who is really good ball carrier centrally. You know, it's quite rare to have someone who is a dribbly boy playing in the middle of the pitch. You know, normally they're ball players, have good runners and off the ball players. It's rare to have someone who is, always just wants to carry it when they get the ball in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah.
But I think there were some pros and cons, by the way. Like, I think that's the risk versus the reward. I think you make things happen because you commit defenders by doing that, particularly centrally, and it's really threatening. It's really scary to play against. But if you give the ball away in that situation, then losing it centrally, of course, is more dangerous than losing it wide. And there was a couple of times where we did lose it centrally off the back of those runs. Did well to counter press and win it back, by the way. So it never really came to anything. But I think that's the risk and the reward, and I think that's maybe where you've got to be a little bit careful, but let's focus on the positives. It was a good attacking display, and he made things happen, and it was exciting. No, we all go to football because we want to enjoy it. We all go to football because we want to be entertained to an extent, don't we? Or we at least enjoy that part of it when we are, and it's entertaining. It's exciting, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with you on that. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, obviously, how it does go on Saturday. We have got a Birmingham fan in the chat as well, so we'll keep it nice and pleasant when we do preview the game in a little bit. But what we're going to do is we'll come back and then we will talk about some questions that we've got. Right, let's go. And welcome back. Thank you to whichever sponsors it was this week for those ad breaks. Right. So I said earlier on that we had a couple of Patreon questions out of the Discord, Chris, that I think we're going to talk about before we move on to Birmingham. And there's been some really good discussions in there this week, by the way, as there is every week. So, if you're not a patron, get yourself signed up, because you can get yourself involved in the Discord. I believe Gary puts a couple of extra dog walks on there now as well. So there's a few kind of bits there. And you may also be able to get yourself a ticket for the special live event that we are doing over in, April, which will be
April the 12th.
Good.
I think.
Absolutely. That is correct. I hope so. Otherwise, I need to change my flights. So, yeah, get yourselves involved with that one. But as I said, a few questions. Now, the first one that came from Michael S. So, as I said to Chris before we started recording, I think Skubala has snuck his way in to ask for our opinion. Who are we kidding? Why would he ask for our opinion? The question that came in here from Michael was, chaps, don't often comment on here or other forums, but do very much read everything. The question is, to what extent do we think our goalkeeper recruitment has impacted our form this season? We're dealing with fine margins at this level, but the view is that potentially if we still had Lucas Jensen between the sticks, we could be 6 to 9 points better off this season and looking up rather than kind of looking down or kind of having that kind of mid-table mediocrity, which potentially a little bit of a harsh word to use, but mid-table obscurity we'll go with instead. So, Chris, first of all, I'm just going to put a quick point out there on here. No matter what goalkeeper we bring in at the moment, that we brought in last summer, that we potentially look to bring in next summer, the summer after, whatever, their bar that has been set for them is unbelievably high. We sold Lucas Jensen for, a rumoured £400,000. We've had the likes of Alex Parr. We've had the likes of Josh Griffiths. We've had the likes of Carl Rush. The calibre of goalkeeper that we've had in League One over the past 4 or 5 years has been outstanding. So any goalkeeper that came in was always going to find it probably a little bit difficult to sort of compete with that level. George Wickens, Zach Geacock, we've spoken about it, how them two are both now fighting for that number 1 shirt. Do you think that we've maybe not quite as we've not replaced Lucas Jensen as well as maybe we have done for Lasse Sorensen with Tendai Darikwa?
Great. It was a really good question, this, by the way. And I think what is telling is we've referenced the recruitment a few times this season. I think Joe Taylor, and obviously not having him in the squad this season has been a big comparison. Right, that's something that we're missing. We haven't got it this season. Lars Sorensen, particularly when he was sold, we all thought we'd miss him a lot. I still miss Lars, mainly because he was a lovely guy as well as he was good on the pitch.
Yeah.
Tendai has replaced him quite nicely, but there's no denying how dangerous a player Lars was for opposition and how important he was. And then, of course, Joe Taylor's goals and his pace in behind and his style. We've mentioned that quite a bit. What we haven't mentioned too often is how big a loss Lucas Jensen was. And I don't think this is a massive criticism of our current goalkeepers, but more a praise of Lucas, because there's not actually a single goal this season which would be directly attributed as a goalkeeping mistake. Yet both Gcock and Wickens have got, it's actually quite marginal now, but a negative goals prevented statistic. Sorry, that's one of many attributes and statistics that goalkeepers have and are measured upon. But Lucas was absolutely head and shoulders above not just what we have currently, but in terms of the whole of League One last season in that particular metric. In terms of like your meat and potatoes goalkeeping, keeping the ball out the net, he was like statistically and also visually, we all saw it. He was the best goalkeeper in League One last season. And every single one of those goalkeepers that we've had as regulars over the last 4 or 5 are all playing Championship or Premier League now. So they're big boots to fill, aren't they? They really are big boots to fill. So it's a great question. I think it's also very, very difficult to expect ourselves to be able to directly replace goalkeepers of that quality consistently, because there's not many out there. There's only one goalkeeper in each team that plays. There's maybe one in the wings and maybe a third one if you're lucky. There's not many to choose from, really, that are going to be available, that are going to be at the end of a contract, for example, that are going to be better than you already have. So it's a really interesting question. I think it's a great point, and it's one that I think maybe I will make a point of referencing maybe more often this season, because I agree. I think actually if we did have Lucas Jensen still in goal, we probably would be a few points better off. And it's not just he might have saved a few shots that the other ones haven't done. I think it's the unseen elements. It's the parts that maybe don't get statistics really noticed in claiming crosses, just that presence and having the calmness in the area to come and claim a cross rather than punching it, or just being really dominant in that area. It just takes the pressure off your team. And I think that trust is something you can't measure that, but it's something you really see between a goalkeeper and the defence. So that's a long answer to say yes, isn't it? But ultimately, yes, I think it has made a difference.
I think we'd be lying and would be very naive, very daft to suggest that it wouldn't make a difference. I think we'd have known that in the summer. We, when I say we here, obviously the club went with the decision to move to bringing in a younger goalkeeper in George Wickens. Don't get me wrong, Lucas Jensen wasn't old, you know what I mean? But obviously we brought in a young keeper in George Wickens and brought him in on a 4-year deal, which was kind of intended to be this real statement that, we're no longer going to have a different goalkeeper each season, but instead we're going to really try and nurture our own for a few years. And if the first season is a little bit up and down, a little bit rocky, but it comes on for that, then that's fine. I think this is the season where we can probably afford that to be the case. I probably agree as well that if we'd have kept Lucas Jensen, maybe we would be looking up. Would it have been the difference between where we are now in the playoffs? Maybe not quite that much. I think that's quite a lot.
I don't think there's 13 points difference between an elite level goalkeeper and a League One standard goalkeeper, which we currently have. But I think there's a handful of points certainly that we could probably attribute it to. What I will say is, as much as George may be a little bit disappointed with an element of the goal on Tuesday night, I thought after that he performed really well, particularly aerially and his distribution. I thought he was really assured. I felt quite confident and comfortable with him in goal. So that was nice. If I can have that same level of confidence and comfort for the rest of the season with him, I think he can cement his place as our number one once again. And then, like you say, 4-year deal. So one year down, if he's had a really good start in his first season as a regular number one, by the way, in his whole career, then hopefully then he could push on. Who knows, to be eventually at the level or near the level that Lucas was. You never know. We can all but hope, and I think he's definitely got potential. There's no denying he's got potential.
No, 100%. I think also just on that, two points. First of all, if you'd have said to me last summer that we're going to end, let's say we end the season 13 points off the playoffs, right? Obviously, we all hope there's going to be a few more wins between now and then, and it's maybe a little bit closer, but let's just say we do finish that difference. If you'd have given me the choice then last summer at being 13 points off the playoffs or 7 points off the playoffs, but you don't get the 400k you get from Lucas Jensen, I'd have probably taken the 400k because it makes no real difference in what league we're in next year. So again, it's real swings and roundabouts of that one. It's really difficult to kind of judge. And also, I just want to make the point, it's been made in the comments by Andy Brown. I think Jordan Wright was on par with our current keepers. I think it's a very interesting discussion point, that. And I think if it was Jordan Wright or Zach Geacock, for example, who came in when Wickens was injured for that period, I don't think you'd be noticing any kind of a difference with that. It's not an insult to Zach Geacock. It's not necessarily a massive compliment to Jordan Wright. It's just a comment that he was a very good keeper, but we let him go because we knew that we just couldn't offer him the same level of game time, and it was kind of fair enough, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think I'd probably go along with that. I quite liked Jordan Wright. I think when he played, you can see there was a difference in ability between him and Lucas, but as a backup, he was very, very dependable. And I'd say at his current level now, he's probably at a similar point as the guys that we've got. What I would say is, it's difficult to see potential in goalkeepers, I suppose, isn't it? But maybe you felt that Jordan was maybe at the level he was going to be, and he just once he was kind of established in his ability, he needed to go and play regular football week in, week out as number one. Whereas particularly George Wickens, but also I think Geacock can go into this category as well. You can see that they're not done yet. So their ceiling's probably higher than Jordan Wright, but in terms of current ability, they're probably all much of a muchness, I'd say.
Yeah, no,
shall we move on and stop talking about goalkeepers? Because I could happily talk about goalkeepers until the cows come home, but we probably ought to not do that.
You're right. I think I probably got you a little bit too excited for late on a Thursday evening with the goalkeeper union chat. All right, so we've got two more questions that came in from the Patreon, and I'm going to bundle them together because they're a little bit kind of similar. First one being, bit early, but what do you think our budget level will be next season versus this season? Obviously, we don't know who's going to go up or who's coming down, and from both divisions, will the board try and target a little bit more, maybe a little bit less compared to this season? How do we kind of think that's going to look? And then that kind of led into another question, which was regarding the model, and do we see changes in our model in the future, given the whole league's eye-watering investment this year, and the fact that at the moment a regulator doesn't seem like it's right around the corner, like we've been promised for however many years now, from government after board after FA after Premier League after. Don't get me started. I'm just going to quickly say on that one, bearing in mind we first of all increased our budget this year compared to last and went backwards in the league table. That's more based on everybody else in the league, and obviously it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because the board are always going to try something. They're always going to put a little bit of money in, but we're realistic in that ambition, aren't we? And also, it's not like we're likely to have some massive rebuild in the summer. It's not like we're due a massive rebuild or anything like that. We bought a good few players last year on slightly longer contracts. The likes of JJ McKinnon hasn't really been seen too much this year, but next year could have a real big impact for us after his time at Burton. So I don't necessarily think the budget's going to be increased to the extent where we kind of sit here and talking about it in a year's time as we've bought our way into the playoffs or anything daft like that. And then the question on the model, obviously it's a really interesting one. The model is always kind of this big discussion point. The question was kind of phrased of, do we see changes to the model? I see changes to the model every year, and I expect changes to the model every year because it's not this kind of set strategy. Like in Football Manager, for example, when you start a save or you join a club or anything like that, you get the board objectives, sign players under the age of 23, play attacking football, and that's all it is. It doesn't really change that much over time. But that's not what a model is actually. A proper transfer strategy is for a League One football club. And I would be disappointed if it was. It's about kind of being proactive and reactive in equal measure to make sure that we are bringing in players that help the team both for the now and for the future. It's win develop, isn't it? So will there be changes? Yes. And will there be wholesale changes? I don't really see the need for wholesale changes, but again, that's a much bigger debate, isn't it, for a different time?
Yeah, both questions are really good. So I'll, as quickly and concisely as I can, which I know everyone listening and watching knows I find difficult, but I'll try to keep this concise. Firstly, do we expect our budget to be different to this season? I think it's pretty trend is that budgets increase season on season for most football clubs. I think what was just absolutely staggering was the amount in which budgets rise across the board in League One this season. I think there was multiple reasons for this. Certain individual clubs, Wrexham being one, they've got, am I allowed to say this? One of the top budgets in the league is probably what I'm saying. So I would say it's even higher than most people would expect them to be, is probably what I would say about Wrexham. We all know Birmingham, but they're a bit of an outlier anyway. But you've got Wrexham coming up with far more spending power than most League Two teams would do when they get promoted. You've got Stockport that kind of got a little rival with them, thinking they might as well give it a go if Wrexham are. You've got a lot of new money in League One, so a lot of new ownerships probably wanted to make a little bit of a splash, making a little bit of that initial investment. Now, I think it was like a bit of a perfect storm last summer. So do I expect budgets to go up across the board? Yeah, they always do. Do I expect it to go up as much as they did last summer? Well, I flipping hope not. I can't see it. It always rises, but I can't see it rising as ridiculously as it did last summer. So what does that leave us? Now, I imagine we'll have a slightly higher budget than we did this year. Do I expect it to be significantly higher than it is? I don't think we can afford to do that. We lose £3 million a year as it is. You can't just keep adding more and more money to the budget unless you're getting more and more money in. Those losses become completely unsustainable then. Like, in real terms, it's unsustainable now, but in football terms, it's sustainable. So I can see us maybe being similar, maybe a little bit higher, depending on teams that go up and down and budgets in that regard. For example, if Burton end up going down, they're making a good old crack of staying up. But if they do end up going down, I imagine most of the teams that are coming up won't have the budget that they've had this season. I imagine we'll be bottom half for our budget still. I can't, like you said, I can't imagine us significantly increasing. I think Jez mentioned in his interview with BBC Radio Lincolnshire, if we doubled our budget, we still wouldn't be in the playoffs in terms of the budget league table. So that's not the way forward, is it? You can't just keep throwing money at it. You've got to be smart. So that leads us on to the model and the recruitment. And I agree with what you say. It changes all the time. But will we move away from having a desire to sign younger players so you get their current ability now with the wage demands of the ability that they are when they join? If they're on a 2, 3, 4 year deal, the hope is that they on the pitch the quality is higher than their current wage, and then you have the ability to sell them on as well. I think that still has to stick. You have to do that to be a successful club at our level and to operate in the way that we want to do. What I think might change is we might see we'll sign those sort of players, but we still want them to have an impact on the pitch for us this season. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room to get a Zach Bradshaw type player in, or a Ben House as he was when we first signed him, in fairness, to not really feature for half a season, but be that project. I think there'll still be players that we have projects in inverted commas with that we wish to, they're not the finished article when they join us and we're there for the journey, but I think we'll see them on the pitch and in our squad rather than maybe relying on those types of players going out on loans. We'll still see loans, I think, for our youth players from our own academy. But I think that's probably the way that you try and plug the gap a little bit. It's getting, how do you get every last little bit of value from your playing budget? Well, it's having the players that you're paying featuring in the first team in some way, shape or form. That's my opinion. I don't know that from the horse's mouth or anything. But it's very interesting, and it will be very interesting come the summer.
It will be. And for the record, I think that's very much what we tried to do this time last year. The likes of JJ McKinnon coming in, the likes of Rob Street coming in, they were the long-term signings that, the quote-unquote project players. But they, didn't necessarily get into our first team enough during the first half of the season. But instead of loaning them out to the National League North or I'm not putting this on the same level as the National League North, by the way, or the Irish Prem, we're instead loaning them out to the EFL. We're loaning them into the top end of League Two. We're loaning them into the bottom end of League One. that's the sort of player, like you say, that now we're bringing in as those value project players, so that they are maybe a lot closer to being first team level, even if they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think there's probably a hope that they both break into the first team, probably more so with JJ than Rob. Let's think about the competition that Rob Street had when he joined the club. We had, I think, 6 centre forwards, didn't we? We had Jovan and Fred, our players, of course, from our own youth system. We had Ben House, we had Tyler Walker, and there's 5, and then Rob Street as well. So he was down the pecking order. So I don't think there was ever a realistic chance of him having a sustained role in the team, bar big injuries to like multiple players in that position,
or a big early impact from him.
Yeah, of course, and that's partly on him, but he needed the opportunity to do it as well. I would say if we signed a Rob Street type player this summer on the same deal, he wouldn't go out on loan because there would be space for him in the squad. And I think that's probably the difference that we might see in recruitment this coming summer, is every player that we sign will be signed with I think the idea of them featuring regularly for us in some way, shape or form. Should we talk about Birmingham?
We should. We definitely should, because we are talking about budgets. Of course, you can't talk about Birmingham without talking about budgets. And they came into the league. They spent big. They've got a great team to show for it. They've got a good points haul to show for it. They've not been naive in their spending. All right, they've spent a lot of money, but do you know what? They're going to win the league. They're probably going to go up again next year, the way that things look to be going there. And they are a very, very good side, Chris. Now, we joked, didn't we, whilst we were off air setting this up, because we said we would talk about Birmingham, and I was going to throw the question over to you of what can we do to beat them. And it's really weird because it feels like we're talking about an FA Cup tie against a team in a different division who are probably a league or two higher than us. And that's okay to admit. It's, we'll happily be little old Lincoln and then go and get a scrappy 1-0 win. Question is, Chris, how do we do that?
Yeah, difficult. Very difficult. I think you have to respect the opposition here, more so here than against any other team. I think they are. Yeah, you could talk about the budget till forever, but they've got value for it. Like, they are really, really good. Yeah. And I honestly think their ability on the pitch is easily top half championships quality. So, and they're where they deserve to be, by the way. They had a couple of bloody noses, I suppose, at the start of the season. A few maybe challenging losses, particularly the one against Shrewsbury comes to mind. They lost 3-2 in Gareth Ainsworth's first match.
First one, yeah.
Wasn't it? I think Shrewsbury had something like 11% possession for the whole game or something ridiculous like that. So that was a freak result. We all enjoyed it. It was fun to watch. But if that match is played 100 times, like Birmingham win it 99 of them. But it was the one, and that happens now and then. But that was actually the last game they'd lost before they played Bolton on Tuesday night. They'd done what I think most people expected them to. They'd spent a little bit of time acclimatizing to League One, yet still picking up really really good wins and being relatively consistent, but had a few challenging performances or a dodgy loss or dropping points here and there. And what they've done since they lost to Shrewsbury, I think it was 20 matches ago now, so nearly half a season ago, is it's been relentless. Absolutely relentless. Win after win after win after win. Currently top of the league, of course, 76 points. They are 9 points clear of Wycombe Wanderers in second, and they've also got a game in hand over Wycombe as well. They are champions elect, I would say. But they are human because they lost on Tuesday against Bolton. So I think the question is, well, how can we beat them? What you have to look at is, well, what did Bolton do? How can we take inspiration from that? You don't want to copy it because you have to be you. And we have to kind of utilize our strengths as much as you want to expose Birmingham's weaknesses. Not that they have many, but they do have a couple. But I think first and foremost, what type of game can we expect? We can expect Birmingham, we mentioned stylistically, is a team that suits us. They are incredibly good at it. They're the best team in League One I've ever seen at the style that they have. But it's a style that we are designed to be competitive against. So they will always play out short. They will always try and keep possession as much as they possibly can, play through the thirds. And that is much as a defensive mechanism as it is an offensive one, because if they've got the ball, we can't. But also because they play lots of very, very short passes, they get lots of players around the player in possession. If they lose it, that means they've got players around the ball to win it back straight away. Their counter press is probably their biggest attribute. That's what I've been most impressed with this season, is how quickly they regain the ball when they lose it. So I expect us to play quite direct in this game. Personally, I think, you know, if you win it back, we have to get it forward quickly before they can counter press and settle. But stylistically, it suits us, but they're good at it. There's no denying they're good at it. They're the best team in this league I've ever seen in League One at that style. But they lost against Bolton on Tuesday. So what did Bolton do, and what weaknesses do Birmingham have? Albeit, you know, they're not really they're not gaping holes in their defensive line or anything. But there's little, you know, cracks in the armor maybe here and there. So firstly, Bolton played a 3-4-2-1. So basically a 3 with wing backs, a box midfield with one up top. So what they did is they tried to make sure they had 4 players in the centre of the pitch to stop Birmingham penetrating that central part of the pitch, and it worked. Birmingham only had 10 touches in Bolton's box. Only had, I think, 5 or 6 shots in the whole match as well. It really works. They flooded the middle of the pitch. So we could do that. We could do that if you play our 3-5-2 and you bring, let's say, Ben House playing up front. You bring him deeper and you almost play like almost like a 3-5-1-1. That's a bit negative though, isn't it? We don't have a lot of width going forward because you have to have low wing backs when you play that. If we play a 4-2-3-1 like we did on Tuesday, I think Dom Jeffrey's versatility can help here. We could potentially create that box midfield with out of possession, particularly when the ball's on the right hand side. Jeffries can tuck right in and create that box for us out of possession potentially. So I think we could potentially take some inspiration from that. Bolton's first goal was a counter attack. So counter attack. Birmingham didn't give Birmingham a chance to settle when they lost the ball. Counter and I'd maybe a question mark over Bailey Peacock Farrell in Birmingham's goal, who is a goalkeeper who I've never been particularly sold upon. So maybe goalkeeping weaknesses is something there that could be in our favour. Their second goal was a set piece, and so a wide free kick, first and second contact one, I believe, and then bundled into the net. Good goal. And the third goal was again, it wasn't off a counter attack, but it was a long ball, but it was high intensity, lots of runners, lots of intensity. Again, didn't give Birmingham a chance to settle. So, you know, the 3 goals that Birmingham conceded were probably the sort of goals you'd expect the team that dominate possession to concede when they do concede. They don't concede many, but when they do concede, you'll concede set pieces and concede goals on the break. So I think that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and score a set piece. We're going to try and play on the break. And, you know, we want to be us. We want to be aggressive. We'll probably play higher than a lot of teams do at Birmingham. I think we'll be more aggressive than a lot of teams are at Birmingham, particularly off their goal kicks, because I think goal kicks it's a set piece, isn't it? It's rehearsable for both teams. And I think that can probably play into our hands a little bit. What I will say is Birmingham have only conceded 22 goals this season, so they are not weak defensively at all. But because they dominate the ball so much, they don't concede many chances, which is obviously positive for them. They don't concede many set plays either. They've conceded 8 set pieces all season, goals from set pieces, which is one of the lowest numbers. But they've also faced by far the fewest set pieces against them. Yeah. And we have scored 5 goals from set pieces, more than anyone else in the league. We've scored 23 goals from set plays. So it's hardly a weakness of Birmingham, but as a percentage of their goals conceded, 8 out of 22 it's around 40%. So it's not a million miles from half the goals they concede at set plays. I've seen John's comment in the Birmingham fan in the chat here about it'd be nice to see a team try and have a go at us. So many do just kind of sit in a deep block and try and frustrate us. And sorry to disappoint you there. I think we will try and frustrate you. I think at times we will be in a deep block, but I think when the opportunity is there for us to press and be aggressive, I think we will try and do that. I don't think we'll be 11 men behind the ball for 90 minutes. I don't think that will work for us. We know that actually there are some question marks over us defensively, but generally speaking, we're good at restricting teams from lots of chances. What we just happen to do is gift 1 or 2 regularly, haven't we? But we'll have Pawdy back, which will help. I think Tom Hamer will start. He was brilliant on Tuesday. I think we've settled there. So Pawdy and Hamer as a back 2 in our centre backs with Tendai and Sean as if we play a 4, or of course we can shift into a 3 there. So all of that into a small little package. Can we win? Yeah. Will we? Probably not. But I think we can give it a good go. This is the best version of the team, the type of team that we're set up to be competitive against. So it'll be a good test. And then if you can get something out of this, it shows that we're kind of, I suppose, all the hopes this season almost proved correct in regard to, we're settled to play against this sort of team. We just haven't played against this sort of team as often as we expected to, which is maybe, at least in my mind, one of the reasons that we've been inconsistent. But let's respect Birmingham. They're a very, very good football team. They'll probably win this match. But I'm hoping we give them a tough time. I'm hoping we'll have a goal to celebrate. And you never know. You never know. It's a sort of game that now and then we turn up against, and it's a sort of game that we have track records of winning. I always remember when we beat Ipswich at Portman Road the season they got promoted, and it was a very similar type of fixture, wasn't it? So we shall see. I'm going into this hopeful. If we had a tough game against Crawley, I'd have been terrified about this game. But that Crawley result's just given me a little bit of comfort and confidence, and it feels like a bit of a free hit, really, doesn't it?
It does. I'd love for it to be anything like that Ipswich game, conceding 32 shots or whatever it was. I think we had 3 or 4, and we won 1-0. Anything like that again, obviously we would relish that opportunity. I think from everything that you were saying there, and the way that we know that Birmingham are like, we're just going to have to take the chances that we get. I think we'll get chances. They'll be fewer and further apart than it would be against really anybody else in the division, but we will get chances. It's about taking them. Having that off the back of scoring 4 goals on the Tuesday night before fills you with that little bit more confidence that we will be able to take those chances, especially when you bear in mind the players and the goals that we were scoring on Tuesday night as well. It'd be interesting to see how we line up on Saturday. But either way, probably with you. Probably it's a bit of a free hit. Either way, we're going to go into it with a lot of hope, because that's what we do. That's what we as football fans do, and that's what we will be talking about on Sunday on the next podcast when we dissect the Birmingham City game. But that has been episode 363 of the Stacey West podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. And until next time, up the imps.
Up the imps.
Hey!